So I kind of asked Nigel today to give us his top 5 tips, what you need if you're thinking of setting up a squat. Nigel, over to you.
Okay, top five tips is the first one is plan early. The second thing probably is use professionals. If you're going to build a practice, you need to use a dental builder, somebody who's done it before. The third thing, control your costs. When you're sitting down to plan your practice, plan it for what you want, what you need, and what you can actually afford. The fourth one, I suppose, is if you follow the tried and tested way, you will probably succeed. If you don't follow it, you will struggle. Now remember that you will have to do projections and a business plan. This is number 5.
Hi, and I'm really happy today. We've got the amazing Nigel Crossman with me from Samira. Now, Nigel has been in healthcare for many years. He was actually the head of healthcare for RBS, and he has a lot of knowledge about financing and leasing. And I'm really pleased to have him here today to talk us about tips on how you can finance your dental project. So, hi, Nigel. Thanks for joining me today.
Good morning, Shabnam.
So, Nigel, tell us a little bit how you got into healthcare or how you got into helping dentists with finance.
Right, okay. So obviously it's a long story. I've been in banking 40, well, I was in banking 40 years. Started as a boy in Vauxhall in a branch and worked my way through all the jobs. Eventually became a commercial manager. And for the last 10 years that I was in the bank, I was involved in what was called special relationships, which was dealing with people who had issues, problems, trying to sort them out and trying to get them back on the road to being a normal client again, a normal customer for the bank. And from there, I went in to run the healthcare team. Now, the healthcare team in RBS is split by region. So I looked after London and the South East, which is quite a chunky region, I've got to say, especially the number of dentists in there. Um, and the speciality that they do is healthcare. So that was dentists, doctors, vets, care homes. But the vast majority of work is always dentists because, dentists are the ones that borrow money and there's a lot of them. So that's what happens. So yeah, I mean, I ran a team of, I think it was about 12, 15 managers across the southeast and London. And my job really was just to facilitate lending money. Banks like dentists. I mean, there's a fear amongst some dentists that, banks don't like them. They do like them. They are good clients. They pay their money back, they pay it on time, and they run really successful businesses if they're run properly. So, they're what a bank would call a green light. So on a traffic light system, they're green.
So I was telling you that, I've been a dentist 20 years, and one of the biggest things that put me off setting up my own practice was being risk averse financially. I was like this squirrel. I just saved and saved and saved and saved. And I think I'd dip my toe in, I'd look at a property to buy it, but then I'd get outbid, and then I kind of thought, oh, it's not meant for me. Or I'd look at some practices and it wasn't quite right. And I'd be like, oh, I'm kind of almost relieved that it wasn't working out for me. So I could just keep this little nest for myself. And what I realized was that I wasn't actually living my dream and I wasn't really growing the way I wanted to grow. So whilst I was happy with this little nest of cash, I was actually also very frustrated by it. And at a point, I kind of decided I want my own practice. And after 5 years of looking, it was interesting when you're looking to buy practices, they give you 3 years of accounts for the practices. And I remember looking at all these accounts and always having to go to accountants to help me figure out what these accounts meant, because it didn't really make that much sense to me as an associate, all these costs and figures and how it was allocated, or whether actually this was a profitable business or not. So financially, I didn't have that much knowledge. And in the end, after 5 years of trying, for whatever reason, the practice purchases didn't work out. And then I ended up setting up a squat. And again, that was a complete unknown to me. I had no idea even what you needed for a squat. Can you believe I actually forgot about compliance when I was setting up? I was like doing all the accounts, doing builders, supplies, materials, equipment. And then at some point I was like, oh, shoot, compliance needs to be done as well. And I remember it just being everything all at once. And with the finance, it was you're right, it was the fear of the unknown. I really felt that they weren't going to lend to me. So I'm really pleased to have you today, because I can imagine you've got such a wealth of knowledge. So I kind of asked Nigel today to give us his top 5 tips of what you need if you're thinking of setting up a squat to kind of make it successful. So, Nigel, over to you.
Okay. I mean, the top five tips is, it varies obviously from time to time, but I've tried to put the sort of general ones down. I mean, the first one is plan early, because as you said, there are things you forget. So you forgot compliance, which was reasonably major. You
I'm
know,
the queen of compliance, by the way, so it's something
well,
that I just naturally know, but actually had to be
yeah,
done.
yeah, but it happens. It happens. So if you plan early for what you want to do, so you need to settle on what you need to do. So do you want to buy? Do you want to set up? And as you say, if you want to buy and you get three sets of accounts, they're confusing. You're an associate dentist. You're not an accountant. I'm not an accountant, but I will look at accounts from a banking point of view. And the important thing in accounts is not the net profit, it's the actual what's called EBITDA, which is the earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Sounds really complicated. It's really not. You just add back all the things that you wouldn't have if you bought the practice. And that's the value of the practice. And that's what you would be earning. So on buying, what you do is you send it to someone like a broker, get them to have a look at the accounts and get them to comment on them. There are lots of things in accounts, and I think we touched on this earlier, where people put things in there that perhaps shouldn't be in there, things that they're personal to them. So we have dentists paying their family who don't work in the business. We have paying for cars that are not owned by them, this sort of thing. So you have to look into accounts quite deeply. With the startups, the issue obviously is you don't have any information. There's
Mm,
no information for a startup. So the plan early is all about you as the person. So the bank is going to look at two different things. It's going to look at you, and that's your background and the way you set up your finances, how you are, what work you've done. And then they're going to look at the business. Now, the business obviously is very difficult to look at because there's no income.
mm.
So they've got no accounts, they've got no information. So what we put together is a business plan and projections. Now, the business plan and projections are the thing that the bank will lend the money on. So that's the very important. So plan early, get your things in order. So you talked about saving like a squirrel. So yes, make sure you've got some cash in the background. You're going to need plenty of cash. Make sure your CV's up to date. Make sure your tax affairs are up to date. Make sure your credit score is good. Make sure there's no blips on your credit score. And also run your bank account properly. Don't overdraw your account. Don't have unpaids. These are things that lenders will look at and go, don't like this person. They're not running their account properly. It will put them off. So you get all those things in the background and you get all those things right. And you get all those things in front of someone like me who's had a look at them and gone, yeah, that's fine. They're all okay. So your background information is correct and good. That's the important thing. Okay.
I know someone that didn't have a very good credit score
Yeah.
because they just always used to pay everything cash.
Okay.
And they never
Yeah.
needed a credit card, so they just always paid for things. And I was like, just get a credit card and pay it off every month. And they're like, but I don't need to. I'm like, I know, but you need it for your credit score. So even something as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's about planning ahead. So you don't want to be doing that the week before you apply for a bank loan
Mm.
because credit scores don't work for 2 or 3 months. So
If
you've
someone
got
had
to
a
look
bad
at it.
credit score, for example, they were overrun on their accounts or they had a few blips on their accounts, like you mentioned, how long would it take for that to be cleared or for the bank to think, actually, no, that was a historic thing and it's over now, or
It takes 2 or 3 years to clear
2 or 3 years? Okay.
because on credit scores, they often show the last 2 or 3 years
Okay.
payments. Now, if you've got that and there's a valid reason for it, so if something happened or a bank messed up. That's not unusual. Or your direct debit's got cancelled. And if it's a one-off, that's fine. And if it's been brought up to date, that's fine. If you can prove that you've caught up, that's fine. So yeah, you've got to look at everything and you've got to look at the reasons why. And so don't just think A equals B. It doesn't. Sometimes it equals Z.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a story
So
behind everything. Yeah.
there's a story behind everything, and if it's a bad story, we will tell you it's a bad story, and we'll tell you that you're gonna have to wait a couple of years to clear all those records off. So you've got to be careful. The other thing on credit scores to be careful of is when you're looking for insurance or any sort of personal loan, not to go to too many people because everyone records against your credit score.
Okay.
as an inquiry, and that doesn't look good on your credit score when you've got perhaps 30 or 40 inquiries. But again, if you can tell me why you've done that, I was looking for insurance and I looked at 30 people, then that's fine. But just be careful. Just be careful. The second thing probably is, and this is fairly straightforward, really, is use professionals. So, I say this to dentists all the time. So if you're a dentist, should I take my own teeth out? And the answer is, well, no, not really. You should come to a dentist. Right. So if you're going to build a practice, you need to use a dental builder, somebody who knows all the regulations from CQC. He knows about the flooring, he knows about the walls, the lighting. Somebody who's done it before. Do not use your father's friend's brother, who's a builder, because whilst they're a lot cheaper and they look like a lot cheaper, they're not a lot cheaper
Mm.
because compliance, CQC will come and visit the practice. And if they don't like it, they will not let you open. So you've got to be very careful. So use dental builders.
Yeah, I had someone that used non-dental builders, and
Mm.
he said he was paying them VAT, but they weren't actually VAT registered. And they
Yeah.
found out halfway through the build, and in the end they left halfway, and he was left with like this potential fraud, like no builders. But it's a significant saving. I know someone else who recently set up a Scot 2 years ago, and she got her own builders to do it. But she works in compliance and CQC, so she knew all the rules and regulations.
That's
So
fine.
she was able to manage it, but she said it was a massive headache because
Yeah.
she had to really check everything and check it. And we're talking about millimeters of wood and, like literally
Yeah.
really
Oh, yeah.
specific diameters
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah. We've had situations where doors have been put in the wrong place, where they put a counter unit, a unit in front of the door that they put in to go into the decon room. So there's a door to the decon room, but there's also a cabinet in front of it. So that was useful. And no entry to the decon room after that. So, no exit door on the decon room. So there are things, yeah, if you know what you're doing, you can do it, but also it will suck up a lot of your time.
Mm,
And the fact is, as an associate dentist or an owner, you can actually earn more by doing what you do day to day.
yeah.
So use professionals, let them get on with it, let them do the job. So that's builders. Also use dental solicitors, especially if you're buying. If you're buying a practice, they will protect you against perhaps ongoing litigation, new litigation that might be coming. You don't know. No one's going to sit there and go, oh yeah, by the way, I think I'm going to get sued. And the same with when you're buying a leasehold. Make sure you get the right leasehold. Make sure it's got the right planning. Make sure it's got the right ability to be. The lease is correct, and it's within what we call the Landlord and Tenant Act, which gives you some
Mm.
protection later on when you renew your lease. So you've got to
Interesting.
be
Mine
very
isn't.
careful, right?
Interesting. Mine isn't within the
Well, no, because
tenancy
yours is an
agreement.
unusual location. Yeah,
Yeah, I've got a very complex lease.
call it a council lease, is it?
So actually, the building and the park used to be owned by Napoleon's grandson, I think, and
Oh, blimey.
he betrothed it to the community of Pinner. So it's
Oh,
not
no.
actually owned by anyone, but the council obviously manage it.
Yeah,
And then it was then subleased to a trust for 100 years. And that original lease was not within the Tenancy Agreement Act. And then I had a lease under that umbrella, and it was just for me to get that, they'd have to rewrite the entire lease for the entire building and with the council, and the solicitors' bills were just astronomical.
yeah.
So I had to accept it.
So you needed a good solicitor.
Yes, I had a
Yes, you
really,
really did.
very
Yeah,
good one.
yeah. And I'd say the same about use an experienced finance broker. Use someone who's works in the healthcare industry.
You mentioned solicitor. So would you recommend getting a solicitor that's like affiliated with the broker or with the accountants, like so they know they work together, or does it matter?
No, you don't really want someone who's affiliated. You want someone
Not
independent.
affiliated, but
Yeah,
just
yeah,
they work well
yeah,
together. Because it's
yeah.
like
They
with
work well
dentists,
together.
and I work good with an orthodontist, or he knows my style, and we have the same ethics or same protocols. Or no, it doesn't work like that in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we will give you a list of solicitors and dental builders who we've worked with in the past. We're not recommending. We say, look, we've worked with these people. They've worked with our clients, and we don't know of any issues.
Okay.
And that way you can have a good look at them and say, well, these people are going to be good.
Mm.
Yeah, they've got experience. That's the important thing. The
Yeah.
important thing is they've got the healthcare dental experience. The third thing, probably the top five tips, and you touched on this a little bit, is control your costs. You know, it's very nice. So I always say to dentists, and I use the thing I used to use in the bank, when you're sitting down to plan your practice, you can plan it for what you want, what you need, and what you can actually afford. They are three very different things. Hopefully, what you want, what you need, and what you can afford will match up. But if you ask someone, it's a bit like asking a child what they want for Christmas. If you ask them what they want for Christmas, your list, Santa's list will be pages long. If you ask them what they need, they don't really know. And if you ask them what you can afford, you know that. So
You're buying
it's not,
everything.
but it's not what they want. You know,
Yeah.
but you've got to look at your costs. And when I say costs, you've got to look at things like staffing. You've got to look at your rent. You've got to look at the debt costs. Now, so staffing, you need to set your practice up in a certain way, and we'll cover that in a moment. And but you need to keep your costs really low because at the outset, your income's going to be nothing on day one, something on day two, a little bit more next week. It's not going to be. We get a lot of dentists with their accountants send us the figures, and they're going to do 144,000 in the first year, which is 12 grand a month. And no, it doesn't work like that. It will build. It will build, and if you're a good dentist, and hopefully the ones we work with, they will build into a good sum, but it will build very, very slowly. And you've got to remember that. And you've got to remember that initially, initially you will lose money. Now
Mm.
that's not a problem. A lot of dentists and a lot of accountants shy away from that. The banks expect you to lose money in the first few months. This isn't this is reality. You know, they want to see a realistic projection. So they want to see £2,000 in the first month, and they want to see £28,000 in the last month, but they don't want to see 20,000 in the second month,
Mm.
unless you're a specialist and you can
Yes.
really, you've got your own book that you're bringing across or something like that. That's different. So they all vary immensely, but you've got to really look after your costs. And staffing and rent are very important. So the fourth one, I suppose, is follow the tried and tested method of setting up a practice. Now, obviously, I used to work for a bank. We used
Mm.
to do startups, and we had a certain way of doing them. Now, we have followed that mantra since we came into Samira. So all our team are ex-bankers. So if you follow the tried and tested way, you will probably succeed. If you don't follow it, you will struggle. And this is quite simple. You know, the lenders like you to only fit out one surgery fully at the beginning, if there's only one of you. Because at the end of the day, that's all you're going to use. If you fit out three surgeries, you're paying for three surgeries equipment and you're only using one.
Mm.
So you've got two very expensive storerooms and you've got one surgery you're using, which is not going to bring in enough income to cover the debt for the other ones. So one surgery fully. The other surgeries can be fitted out with flooring, electric, water, but that's it. Just
Yeah.
empty rooms, ready to go
That's
when you.
exactly what I did. So we planned our practice in its entirety, and then we broke it down into phase one, phase two, and phase three.
Yeah.
So we did phase one first with the one surgery, but all the plumbing and the wiring and everything was ready for surgery two and surgery three. And then during COVID, we put in surgery two, and now we're going to go into phase three. So we planned it ahead, but we didn't put it all in on day one.
It's sort of very small steps, but if you do the steps in the right order, it will work for you. Won't cost you a lot of money. Initially, staffing, we talked about staffing costs. You have a receptionist nurse. You don't have a receptionist and a nurse and a practice manager, which you often see on people's first draft of their business plan. No, you can't afford those people. So you have a receptionist nurse, and you're not going to be over busy at the beginning. So the receptionist can be the nurse and then go back on reception. And when you're not there during the week, because you're only working perhaps 1 or 2 days a week, that person is there to talk to people, answer the phone, book appointments in for the days that you are there, and that will work for you. You've got to look at the rent. I mean, most people don't understand. You can negotiate on rent.
Mm.
I mean, why would you want to pay rent from day one? It's going to take you probably 2 to 3 months to convert the building into a dental practice. So always ask for a rent-free period. Now, I mean, people say to me, "Oh, how much should I ask for?" And they go, "Well, how long's a piece of string?" But I always say, "Well, ask for 12 months." They go, "Well, 12 months. They never give me 12 months." I said, "Well, if you ask for six, you'll get three. If you ask for 12, you might
Yeah.
get six." Now, this makes a big difference on your costs. You imagine having no rent for the first 6 months. That would
Yeah.
be brilliant. If you can get it for 12 months, go back to the fact that landlords, like dentists, as banks do, you pay your rent, you invest heavily in the property, you're not going anywhere. And when your lease is up, you will either renew it at minimal cost to the landlord, or you will sell it to somebody else at minimal cost to the landlord. All he's got to do is do another lease. He hasn't got to make you take everything out of the property. He hasn't got to do anything. He hasn't got to supervise anything. So, they like dentists. You've got to remember that you need to work elsewhere as well. So it's going to be hard. I always say to people, it's going to be hard. All right. Don't think it's going to be easy. You're going to work 3 or 4 days somewhere else. You might actually work more days than you do now.
Yeah, I was working 6 days when I first set
There you
up
go. And
practice.
that's a good thing. But it's only for a period.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely, as your income increases and you spend 2 or 3 days in the practice, you can then spend 2 days elsewhere. But you need to keep your income up. Many reasons: household bills, and also remember what I said earlier. You will be losing money in the first few months, so you're going to need to put some money in. So you need to keep churning money, unfortunately, to put it in. If you've got a partner who's got a mega salary, then that's great. But in most cases, the bank want to look at you and they want to see you working. They don't rely on the partner's income. And as I said, understand it is hard work. This is what we say to people, but it's worth it. You get the practice you want, you get the building you want, you get the location you want. Hopefully, you get the staff that you want.
Yeah.
You don't buy in all these things when you're buying, like, such as when you're buying a practice. You bring in people you like to work with, and you like the location you want to work in, and everything else. So that they're all good positives for you. Now remember that you will have to do projections and a business plan. This is number 5. You've got to do these things and they've got to be accurate. Now with lenders, you it's sort of one stop, one chance hotel. If you put in an application and they don't like it and they send it back, they don't want you to go, "Oh, all right, then I'll change the figures and I'll do it this way." That's not how it works. They want it right first time. They want to see a realistic, accurate projection, if there is such a thing in the world, because you are projecting. It is a guesstimate, so it has to be a sensible guesstimate. It has to be a sensible approach to it. So you've got to look at that very carefully. You need to, in your business plan, you need to cover off your competition. There's going to be competition. Don't be afraid of competition. Especially in this day and age. I mean, we've opened practices. We've opened probably last year. We probably opened 35, I think, startups.
Wow.
We've done over 100 in the time, and they're all still going. That's the important thing. They're all still going. But look at the competition. I've opened startups next to another practice. We opened one in Southwest London, 5 doors down from Bupa. There are reasons why. If you go into these practices, and I recommend you don't do it, I recommend you get a relative to do it who's not a dentist.
Yeah.
Go in and see what the welcome's like, see what the access is like. Are they taking on new patients? So if they're not taking on new patients, or the next hygienist appointment is 5 months away, or if I want to see a dentist for a checkup, well, that'll be 6, 7 months. There's a need in the area for another dentist,
Mm.
so you can get in there. So don't be afraid of competition, but also be aware of it. So you need to go in, you check out the dentist, you need to look at them, what they're doing. And you need to highlight the positives. You need to highlight the positives. Are you bringing new services to the area? Are you doing things that other dentists in the area do not do? If there's more than one dentist, that's a huge advantage, because obviously you're sharing the responsibility, you're sharing the workload. You can do more days each at the beginning,
Yeah.
so you can grow the practice a little bit quicker. Local knowledge is important. Don't try and open a dentist practice in Cumbria if you live in South London. You need to be in the area you know. You need to be somewhere within a reasonable distance to travel, that sort of thing. And if you've got family backup, that's great. If you've got family, you've got parents, or you've got brothers or sisters, which is not unusual to be pharmacists and doctors and other dentists. They're someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Dentistry can be quite lonely. We all know that. I think there's been lots of new in the news recently about, the loneliness of dentists and the pressures on them. Yeah. The other thing is, if there are negatives, we deal with them. It's no good going to a bank and hiding all the negatives because they are not stupid. They've done this before. They've done this loads of times. They will look at it and go, yeah, but what about this? And what about that? And what about this? So we will go to them when we write an application. We go to them, we say, yeah, we appreciate that the area is not particularly good, but as you know from the local council report, it's an up and coming area and it's growing, and they're going to build 5,000 houses down the road. You know, you mitigate the issues that are there if there are issues. Hopefully, they're not issues, but any issues you mitigate. Same as you do with the competition. So you say, yeah, there are 5 other dentists in the town, but they're all full. 3 of them are NHS only. So they're not competition to a private dentist, but they're full. And the waiting list. I mean, we had one recently where the female dentist went into the competition up the road, and they told her that they were not taking on new patients at the moment, and they had a waiting list of 500 people. And she said to me, "Well, that's not very good, is it?" I said, "No, that's marvelous. That is marvelous. 500 people, when you open 5 doors down the road, are going to walk down the road and come to you." And
Yeah.
that's so you've got to look at a negative can be a very much a positive.
Mm.
So a practice that's full up the road is really good news. So don't say it's not good news. So these are the sort of major things you should look at. And I say use professionals, use people, talk to people, plan in advance, go on courses, go
Mm.
Shabnam runs courses. Everyone, lots of courses out there. Go on courses, talk to other people who are doing it or have done it. That's important. Get a coach because it is very different to being an associate to being an owner. At
Yeah.
5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, you don't go home, you sit there and you chase up your debts and you do your CQC and you pay your bills
Yeah.
that you have to pay. And you've got to look at all these things. And it's you get the information you get from other people is very, very important, very important. So a simple example of that is I'm doing one at the moment, and we've got a quote for the build and the equipment. And it goes, oh, that's it. So I need to borrow this. Okay, yeah, no, no. The build quote is really good. It covers everything, and the equipment is good, but he's got no hand pieces on there. He's got no stock.
Mm.
He's got
It's got
no
computer.
advertising. Yeah, he's got
Yeah.
no computer. He's got no phone system.
No reception furniture.
Yeah. Luckily on this one, the reception furniture was there, but it'll be empty because he's got nothing to put on it. And when you add up these things, it comes to quite a lot of money. I mean, if you
Yeah.
look at
I know someone who's setting up a squat and last minute he's like, do I need a um washer disinfector? Do I need an ultrasonic bath? I'm like, I wouldn't cut that like cut corners that much, but it's getting to the
possibly,
point where
yeah,
he's just spent so much extra at the end that
yeah,
wasn't expecting that he's
yeah.
just like, do I really need this? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, the reason I bring that up is if you go back to the bank, the lender, at the 12th hour and say, oh, by the way, I need another 30,000, they're not going to be happy. If you go
Would
back
they
to the
give
bank,
it? Would they give it? I wouldn't think they would.
they will struggle. They will struggle. Credit would be unhappy, is probably a good word. Um, having worked in credit, they would be unhappy. Um, if you go back to them at the 11th hour and you say to them, actually, I don't need that 20,000. That's great news. They're more than happy.
Yeah.
Going down is great. Going up is really not good. So you need to put everything in at the beginning, and you can include things in your projections. You can include pre-solicitors costs. You can include architects costs. All these sort of things that you're going to spend money on, you can include. You
Mm,
can't include rates, rent going forward, and staff costs, which a lot of
yeah.
people do include, and we have to take them out. Those are ongoing costs. But anything pre, a lot of people forget about things that they've done already with regard to a practice. If they've got planning or they've asked an architect to do some drawings and they've paid £3,000 for them, they can include that in their costs. and that
Yeah.
way they can get some of it back.
Mm.
So there is a maximum, obviously, on what banks will lend you, and that's a sensible maximum. It keeps people's costs within certain parameters. But yeah, the banks are there to help, and they can do it. Squats are very financeable. They need to be done in a certain way, and they need to be done correctly. And that really are the three things that I would say at the end.
Magic, yeah, no, amazing. In your experience, one question people always ask me is, how much deposit do I need? If I'm buying a practice or if I'm setting up a squat, well, how much deposit do I need? Like
Right.
from your experience in the current market, because you've just done
Yeah.
35
Yeah.
squats.
No problem. So generally, if you want to buy a practice, you would look at providing a 20% deposit. You can get a little bit more. You can, depending on the price, where it is, quality. But if you work on 20% deposit, that's the general norm. That is what the banks are comfortable at. For a startup, for a squat practice, the banks are more comfortable with 70%. And that reflects their perceived idea that it's more risky. Yeah. So you have to bear that in mind. And on a squat, whilst they will do 70% of the cost, that is subject to a maximum figure of 250,000. So if you spend over 350,000, you'll get 250, but you'll have to find the rest. So it's up to you, how much you do. But they will do it over 15 years if it's a leasehold. They will give you the
Yeah,
first year interest only. That helps the costs. They are aware that it's expensive and they will try and help as much as they can, but they're not going to give the money away. And
yeah,
you do have to pay for it. But at the same time, the money is available for you. The money is available there, and there are various ways of moving the money around for perhaps a combination of bank loan and asset finance for the equipment. But obviously, the problem with asset finance is over a shorter period, so much higher repayment rate.
yeah.
But the interest rates aren't cheap for this. But because you're only borrowing 250,000, it's not too bad. You're not borrowing 800,000,
Yeah,
and
no, but I got
and
I got some equipment on hire purchase, and I got we got a scanner later, we got the OPG machine later. We kind of staggered it so it
yeah,
was
as and when you needed them.
as and when I needed it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. I mean, that's a good way of doing it. That's a very sensible way of doing it. Is buy what you need at the outset and then buy the rest and buy out of cash flow in effect
Mm.
as you move forward. So you just got to control your costs. This is what we talked about right from the beginning. Control your costs, be careful, and ask someone else to overview it and tell you what you can't have. Very important. Yeah, yeah. So let's be honest. I once saw a reception table for £10,000. I don't think they ever bought that. I think they went to IKEA in the end and got something. But, you got to be careful. You can change things later on. You can improve your practice later on. Yes, it's got to look nice. It's got to be functional. It's got to be good. But you can change things later. You don't have to have everything. It's a bit like your own house. Your own house changes over a period, doesn't it? And you decorate and you bring new furniture in. It's no different. Look at it as a project, a long-term project, not a project for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
It is a long-term project.
Yeah. One thing I found with my bank loan was that I didn't have any history of being a business. I was just an associate, and I thought my associate accounts were enough, but it wasn't really because I didn't have any. They wanted references from businesses that I'd worked with, or they wanted some kind of security. So I gave them a letter from my bank, from my accountant. So I gave them other letters. Um, and I remember also I didn't, it kind of linked with CQC, but I didn't have, because I didn't own a business, I didn't have any evidence of me being a leader and owning a business and running a business. So is there any tips you'd give to dentists, like what they could do to kind of, you said courses, but any particular courses that you'd advise?
Well, yeah, because what you've got to look at here is that they're looking at you as a person. So they don't now go for references and all this sort of thing. So you're quite safe. They will look at your accounts. They will look at your tax returns. They want to see that you can do the level of work that you're proposing you would do in the new practice.
Mm,
It's no good working 1 day a week and then telling them you're going to work 5 days a week because you've got no record of it. So you've got to be careful on that. Um, on the practices, yeah, on your CV. I mean, dentists are very dental. Um, so I've seen CVs 5 and 6 pages long, and they've got so many acronyms and initials that I think it's marvelous. But even I don't understand them. Well, half of them are. So just remember who you're doing your CV for. You're doing it for a banking team, and so if you're putting down a course, and that's an implant course, put after it implant course. You know, I know it sounds like you're talking to an idiot, but you know, why
Make
not?
it easy for them.
Make it easy for them. Yeah, make
Yeah.
it easy for them. That's easy. You need to put into your CV some sort of, yeah, you're quite right, Shabna. You need to put some sort of managerial experience, some sort of working with other people. So a lot of dentists don't put this in. So have you trained a nurse recently? Have you mentored another dentist?
Mm.
Have you got involved in stock ordering? Have
And
you
that's
dealt
things
with
I tell people to do as
CPD?
an associate. I'm like, when your principal is interviewing someone, sit in on the interview,
Yes.
sit in on the disciplinaries, on the appraisals, sit at reception, be part of the hiring process. I was really lucky in my practice. I pretty much handled all the complaints. I trained all the nurses. I was a very good associate.
Yeah.
I
You're a
was a
very good
very good
associate.
associate,
Yeah.
and I did everything. I even knew how to run reception. Like I knew all the processes and protocols. I did a lot of the compliance, a lot of the team meetings. So, but even though I had that, I still felt that they were like saying, "Have you not got any more?" And I was like, "I do so much." Like,
Yeah.
but I felt that maybe it's just what I felt. But that don't you have? Do you have anything more? And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't.
It's difficult because I put it down as become involved in the practice that you're in. Because if you're involved in the running of it rather than just going home when you're finished, then and you've got to remember to put that in your CV.
Mm.
You've got to remember to put the things in that are not so much dental.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. And even if sometimes outside interests, if you're helping run your brother or sister's pharmacy business,
yeah.
I do one day there helping out with paperwork. Well, that's quite important. That means you've got some managerial experience.
Mm.
These things are important, as is sometimes the background of your partner. Whilst they might not be involved in the business, I mean, if they're working in accountancy or actuary or in
My
finance,
business partner's husband was a finance director.
there you go. That's quite useful, and it's quite
That's
useful to
quite
put that
useful.
in. It's useful to put that in because in the background, you've got someone who might say to you, you shouldn't be doing that, or,
Yeah.
have you thought of doing it this way? Um, so yeah, you got to look at things like that, and to make you a more rounded person. I suppose that's what we're looking at, a more
One
rounded.
thing I didn't really enjoy with the process, I used a broker, is that I felt that the banking application process was very much a tick box exercise. And I didn't get an opportunity to show them me. So there was these boxes that we ticked. And like you say, you get one chance to apply. And if it's like a no, then it's just a no and that's it. It's kind of, you don't really go back again. And I found that hard. I think I'm more old school. I like having a manager, someone that I can meet, someone that I can talk to. That's not done anymore, is it? It's always done a certain way. It's
And
all
I think we're going back towards that more in healthcare because you're quite right, that personal touch.
because I'll
Um,
tell you my story. So we were applying for loans and for the squat practice, and I've been an associate in a practice for 15 years. And as I said, I was involved in everything. So whenever anybody used to come to the practice, I'd always say hi to them. So I knew my principal's bank manager quite well, and he'd come to all our parties, and he'd invite me to some of the Lloyd's business events that I went to with him. And so when I was doing my loan, I contacted him and I said, "Oh." David, I'm doing my own practice. And because he knew me, I felt better about it because he knew me. He's known me for 15 years. And in the end, we got our loan through them, and that's how we set up our squat. But I felt that if I didn't have that, I would have felt a lot more vulnerable about the process.
yeah, I think you've got a good point there, but I think the banks now are trying to address that by appointing a manager who
Mm,
works with both the broker and the client, and
okay.
actually will come out and meet the client, or at least do a Zoom meeting. At least,
Yeah,
at
we
least
had
meet
nothing.
them.
It was
Yeah, at
literally
least meet
radio
them.
silence. There was
Well,
nothing.
exactly. Yeah, and but what's important here is the quality of the application.
Yeah.
So we don't use tick boxes, and we write the application as we would have written it were we in the bank. So
Mm,
we write what I class as an application to credit. So we set it out in a way. in the steps that we used to set it out in the bank to credit. So, we explain the story, we give the projections, we talk about the projections. We don't just go, here's the figures.
Mm.
We explain why the figures are in such a way. I mean, we will actually do the projections for people if they want us to do them as well. And we do them in a bank approved format. We've got a system which obviously we used when we were at the bank, which we brought with us, and we use that because it sets it out in as I think you said earlier, a clear and easy way for them to read it.
Yeah.
So if they can follow it, they can follow the story all the way through. Then they are more likely, in most cases, well, I think nearly every case we send up has been approved.
Hmm.
They will approve it because they can see the story, they can see the figures, and the figures match with the business plan, which is very important.
Hmm.
That's very important to make sure the
Yeah.
two match. And the business plan is not too long. So,
Yes. I always say keep it short. They haven't
oh,
got time to
two or
spend
three
time.
pages, 2 or 3 pages
Mhm.
is more than sufficient. I mean, I recently got one that was 20 pages
Oh.
and I shortened it quite a lot. Because, and this is no offense to dentists, this is what people do. If you write 20 pages, you will repeat yourself 3 or 4 times
Mm.
because you haven't got that much to say, really.
Yeah.
And the fact is, it just kept saying the same thing. And I think, I've already read this, so
Mm.
big red line through that came out, and some people put their whole CV into it. Well, no, you've already done a CV. You don't need to put it all in the business plan as well. What
Mm.
the business plan should be is what the property is, what are you going to do with it, what's the competition, how do you think you're going to progress?
Yeah.
Fairly simple steps.
Short-term, long-term
Yeah,
goals.
I mean
Yeah.
we've got a template we send out to people when they sign up with us, and it's just a few basic questions, and they say,
Yeah.
"Is that all you want?" I say, "Yeah, that's all we need. We just need to know these things about the practice, about the premises, and about what you want to do."
Yeah.
I mean, a mission statement. I mean, I saw a mission statement the other day was a whole page, and yet I've seen a mission statement that says to be a good dentist, and
The two
actually,
extremes.
well, the two are exactly the same.
Yeah.
And what the whole page said exactly the same thing as that one line. And so you've got to be, you've got to, yeah, okay, one line's a bit brief, but that's what they wanted to be.
Yeah.
And the bank read it, as you said, the time they have to read the application. You've got to remember they've got an application which is the broker application, hopefully written out, and the projections. Then there's a CV, there's bank statements, there's accounts, there's tax returns, there's a map of the place, there's a plan, a floor plan, and they have. I don't know if it's changed now, but there's somewhere between 20 minutes and half an hour to read through all that and make a decision. And
Mm.
they will check things on the internet. They will look it up. They will look up the property. Perhaps if they have time, if they've got a 20-page business plan, they, they're going to do what everyone does on a 20-page document. And I can tell you, most people skim read it, and not really get into the detail of it. It's not what you want. You want them to be reading it, and you need them to be convinced and understand what you're trying to do.
Mm. Now, I hope it never happens to anyone, but you mentioned that you've seen quite a few, some squat practices for sale.
Hmm.
And for those, most of them probably weren't set up correctly or had limited cash flow. If someone has got a practice or wants to just plan if something isn't working out, what can they do? Like, what would you say is good advice if you find that it's not tracking according to what you were projecting and it's needing more money? What would you say to someone? What would you say to a dentist?
I'd say to someone, look at it very early. It's the older story of the ostrich and the giraffe. Don't put
I
your head
know
in
that
the
story.
sand. Don't put your head in the sand. Make sure you stand up and look at it. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and people do put their head in the sand. People go, "Oh, it'll be all right next month. It'll be all right next month." And that continues. If you're starting to have problems, speak to someone. Either speak to your bank or speak to a broker
Mhm.
and try and get some help. I mean, we've looked at a couple recently, and they're mostly because of the high interest rates. They're getting caught on that sort of thing, and things aren't happening. And sometimes you can look at it and just go, "Yeah, but you just need to do this." You just need to think about, if you're only opening 4 days a week, well, what are you doing the rest of the week? Oh, well, I have 2 days off. Well, you might need to work an extra day for a while, you know, and sometimes you need something else just to give you that little push,
Mm,
sort of, if your associate costs are very high because you're not working there, well, there's a simple solution there, isn't there? You go and work there and you reduce your associate costs and you make more money.
mm,
It sounds like it's not rocket science, but sometimes people need to be told. And that's what we used to do when I was in the special relationship department. Sometimes, I remember one guy would never open at a weekend. He was a dentist, and nobody knew why he would never open at a weekend because he was in a prime location for weekend private work.
mm.
And the answer was that his football team were many miles away, and he used to go to all their home games. And that's quite impressive, isn't it? So your business is failing, and but you're enjoying your football. So what do you think? What would you think the suggestion was that we suggested that he perhaps didn't go to the football, and
Every
perhaps he
week.
opened. And actually, the football wasn't every week, was it? It was
Yeah.
only every other week at home, and he could have opened every other week, and that's what he did.
Mm,
And then he just started to generate more income and started to pull himself around. And it is difficult. Sometimes you're quite right. It's about the planning. Sometimes these squat practices, especially, have been set up by principals. They've
mm,
decided that they're going to set up another practice. If they don't give it the time, they don't give it the work that's needed, then it might not work. So, if it's been set up incorrectly, it won't work. If someone had gone and put 3 surgeries in, spent, nearly £200,000 on equipment,
yeah.
and if they're paying that back, they need to earn a lot of money to pay that back. You've
Mm,
got to, and what you've got to remember with asset finance as well is you don't get any interest only period. You pay from month one. So as soon as the equipment's there, you pay for it. So you've got to look at all these sorts of things, and you've got to look at, do you need, I suppose, if you're struggling, do you need as many nurses? Do you need as many receptionists? It's hard, unfortunately. It is very difficult, because you're affecting people's lives. But the first thing you look at is all your costs.
yeah.
And then the second thing I always say is now look at how you can increase your income.
Mm,
Because if you can do both, if you can reduce your costs by 10% and increase, look at your lab bills, look at your materials. I mean,
mm,
are you paying too much for it? Have you just used the same people for the last 20 years because they've been okay? But down the road, you can get you can knock 2 or 3% off your costs. Just look around. It's not dentistry that has these problems. Every business has these problems. No business looks at their costs. I mean, you look at the big banks. No bank starts getting rid of staff until they're not making money.
mm,
They don't look at costs while they're making money. Nobody does.
yeah.
And it's only when it starts to go a little bit pear-shaped that you will start to look at it. So look at it early would be that's the only thing I can say. Look at it really early. As soon as you've got a problem, look at it.
Yeah, I remember in my business plan, there was a question saying, is there anything that would affect your income? And I wrote restriction on delivering my services. I did not know about COVID. But I predicted it. I was like, oh, that I actually thought about that. That's smart.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
smart, but I wasn't expecting it to be so severe. And actually,
Yeah.
our cash flow forecast it didn't track according to what we predicted because just after a year COVID did hit, so we had 4 months of no income at all. And then
Yeah.
when we did go back, it was fallow time, and my son was shielding, so I couldn't even work clinically. It was just you just sometimes like go, what's going on? You just try. I was the best receptionist in the world.
The most
You
informed
just make the best of the
receptionist.
situation. And
Yeah.
actually, patients felt so looked after on the phone by me
Yeah.
that actually we got a really good reputation at that time for being a really caring practice. And,
Yeah.
it just came later. So things happen, you plan and plan and predict and plan, but you
There are
can
some things you just cannot plan
you
for.
cannot plan, yeah.
You
And
cannot
the main
plan
thing
for
I tell
things.
people is to look after their health if they're owning a business, because I say it's very easy just to work, 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 but actually you need to be fit enough to run this and have the energy to run it. So try to kind of be balanced and not be too of a martyr and killing yourself. I think you kind of have to still keep that perspective and find that time to look after your health and yourself. Because in that way you can be a better boss, you can be a better principal, you can be a better dentist, and you'll be more successful.
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah. You just cannot plan for the unexpected. No
Yeah.
matter how many people will tell you you must plan for the unexpected, you can't.
Oh.
So, COVID was just a prime example of that, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it taught us all a
If
lot.
you'd have said 2 years before COVID that everyone would be sitting at home for 4 months and nobody would be working and the government would be paying them money to stay at home, people would have probably locked you up
Yeah,
because it just wouldn't have believed that's what would happen. And if you just said it happened around the world, people definitely wouldn't have believed it.
yeah. I still
And
remember it,
it
but so
did.
clearly there was no planes in the sky. It was just
Yeah, I
quiet.
know. Well, I lived in Twickenham at the time. And, we just moved, went back to Twickenham, and the first thing I noticed was the lack of noise
Mm,
because the planes were gone.
yeah,
Yeah, it was really weird. And so I went into the office and there was no planes. And I thought, well, this is weird.
yeah,
Sort of, where's all the planes gone? But that's what you notice. Suddenly you notice things that you never noticed before. You never noticed the
mm.
noise before. Now you notice that there is no
It's not
noise.
there.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny, isn't it? But yeah, COVID is a very good example of you just can't plan for that. And
Yeah, yeah.
you
Although I did write it in my business plan.
you did
So
write
like
in the business
my business
plan.
plan was like, why did you manifest that? I said I did not manifest
Yeah.
it. It just happened. It just happened. Nigel, thank you so much for your time today. That was really, really informative. Even I've learned something from all your
Yeah.
advice. So thank you so much for your time. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you through Samira, what's the best way of getting in touch with you?
The best way is if you go on the Samira website, you can book a call with me. There's a link to book a call, and you just book a call. And we do calls in the evening as well because we realise that dentists are reasonably busy during the day, and quite awkward to actually get the time, isn't it? So yeah, just book a call. It's a half-hour call. We'll have a chat, see what you need, see if we can help you, and if we can, we can take it forward from there.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Filling the Gap. If you loved what you heard, please take a moment to give me a 5-star review and subscribe. I'd love to hear what stood out for you. You can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Shabnam Zai. I offer a free discovery call to see if I can help you on your journey. If you're interested, you can book a call with me through my website, shabnamzai.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please spread the knowledge and share it with a friend. Thanks for listening and see you next time on Filling the Gap.